All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 5:09 p.m. The first item on tonight's meeting is a strategic planning, and the only item tonight is strategic planning development and next steps workshop with our friends from Oak Casey, and introducing tonight's workshop is Dr. Smith.
Good evening, everybody. You don't have to stop eating. There you go. Feel free to keep eating. We designed this so you can keep eating as we get started today. I'm going to walk you through a few things at the beginning, and this is really all you have to do is listen for a few minutes, and then in a few minutes I'm going to give you some opportunity to have some table talk and review some data, and then we're going to get into the meat of things tonight. As you all recall, we have Jody Duran and Greg Gibson from actually, Greg, this is your first time here, isn't it, with our board? Yeah. Greg Gibson from Oak Casey, and Buck had joined us in the other two times with our board, and Greg also works with Oak Casey. Greg is a retired or recovering superintendent in the state of Texas, and they've been working with us for a while now in the strategic planning process. So I'm going to do a little bit at the beginning tonight, and then I'm going to let them take over on some other things, and we'll go from there. This is a workshop, so tonight it isn't about coming prepared with everything. It's about getting information, working together with the people across the table from you, generating good ideas. We will be back together on June the 5th, and so the work that we do tonight is a precursor to landing some things in the strategic plan, and it allows us to get good information and good next steps. And when we come back together, it'll be a whole lot of clarifying things and finalizing things at that point. So please, tonight, don't feel bad. If you're like, well, I didn't bring a list of questions, or we didn't do a presentation ahead of time. We didn't do that on purpose. This is about processing all of these things together this evening, okay? Up on the screen you can see, and I want to walk you through where we've been, just because we haven't worked with all of this group together before, and I think it's important to outline the steps that we're taking along the way. So we started this whole process out by working with our board in a team of 8 training on January 22nd, and Jody and Buck joined us that evening in this room where we started laying the groundwork for the balanced scorecard and what we were going to try and achieve. And then they came back together with us in March, the beginning of March, to do part 2 of that, and we really started getting into some of the details. At that point, we were beginning to talk a little bit more about what our community was going to be saying and doing, and what kind of information we were getting from everyone. We had those first rounds of community meetings on March 26th and 27th, and you can see those that were up there. And then we had initial cabinet trainings on the balanced scorecard on March 26th and March 31st. So those community meetings, just a refresher for everybody, we had one feeder group, so high school feeder group, think of that area, one feeder group meeting per feeder group, so 6 community meetings over the course of 2 days. And in those meetings, we had attendance ranging from about 8 till about 25. So our overall population wasn't great. I think we had approximately 60 people participate in the round 1 community meetings. On round 2 community meeting, you see on April 7th, that we had about 50 people, and that was at Arlington High School that night. We didn't do them all in separate feeder groups that night, but we got everybody together, and it really ended up being kind of an extension of the first meetings, because we had a lot of brand new people where we were expecting some repeat people. We had a lot of brand new people join us at that point. But during that time, we also realized that about 60 to 100 people so far giving input into the community wasn't enough for us. We needed to go out and get more. So we started a thought exchange, and that thought exchange ran March 31st through April 6th. And we asked one simple question to our community at that time, and that was, how can we improve our school district? Again, the idea of a SWOT is to be able to figure out strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, but ultimately we want to get to the heart of what is it that we want to improve? What's our current reality in our school district? So we asked one simple question from that, and I'm going to show you some results from that in just a minute so you can see those things. Then after that, we got into a calibration meeting. We had a transition in our communications team Veronica Sofer's been helping us out along the way, and so Veronica met with our Moat Casey team to talk about continuing to expand community voice in this process, and that was on April the 24th. And then we started a second thought exchange. It was the next part in all of this. While we attempted to get the current reality in our system by asking, what do we need to improve? We asked them an aspirational question, what are your hopes and dreams for the students in Arlington ISD? And we got some results from that I'll share with you tonight as well, and we'll talk through those a little bit. During that time, we also had a meeting with our cabinet and senior staff just on Monday of this week, and Greg and Jody worked with us to start to take a deeper look in really what our objectives were and what our outcomes were that we might recommend you based on some of the feedback that we've been receiving, so we can have a foundation to start tonight. And we're going to spend a good chunk of tonight's meeting on that part. And then that leads us to where we are, strategic roundtable, and that's our board, cabinet members, and senior staff members sitting around the table together, beginning to make sense of all of these things. Okay, so those are the steps that have been in the process so far in Arlington ISD, and I think we're getting to a good spot on community touch points. What I'd like to share with you now is a couple of some overviews from the thought exchanges. And earlier, I mean like 15 minutes earlier, Sam sent you an email, and everyone in this room should have gotten it. And in that email, there's a link to some data. And I'll pull that up for you so you can see what it is and how you might be able to use that tonight and over the next couple of weeks as we really dive into this strategic planning process. So there was a link in that email that looks like this. It's pretty simple, but of those community meetings and feedback sessions, we have links to all of the information gathered in all of those situations. So example, for the first link you see there, that was the Superintendent's Executive Council. What that is that's all of our senior staff, executive directors, and key senior leaders in our system, along with some principal representatives. On April the 7th, we spent about an hour that morning going over a SWOT analysis with them. And if you click on that link, you can see their feedback, and you can see what they believe the strengths were in our system, what the weaknesses were in our system, the opportunities, and the threats. So again, all of that information is in that document that you can see there. The next document says collective SWOT of board, cabinet, and community. And I believe our board has seen this before, where you saw board, cabinet, and the community advisory team side by side. And those are the three stakeholder groups that we had give us some input on a SWOT analysis there. And you can see there were even some highlighted things that Jody and them highlighted as we talked through some of these things the last time we got together. The third one is from our principals. So on May the 6th, I spent about 45 minutes or so with 76 principals plus a few key district leaders in the room, and we went through the same process, a SWOT analysis from a principal perspective, and you see all of that information in that link. And then I think the part that is rather exciting is we really started to expand some of this. We engaged in those thought exchanges. The first thought exchange, you can see summary of it up there, and you have this link as well. We had 1,218 participants in that one, sharing 1,219 thoughts. And then if you go down, you can see 483 of those people were parents that provided us input on what we needed to improve in our school district. 676 were staff members. And then if you click on either one of these, you can see this tells you what the top thoughts were of that first thought exchange. Number one rated thing that came out of this is, hey, we've got to continue to have smaller class sizes if we want more individualized learning. That seemed to resonate with the 1,200 people that said, this is something we got to work on and improve in our system. So you see the list of all of the top thoughts that were ranked in that thought exchange. And then if you clicked on topics, this is an AI generated report. So based on keywords in the 1,200 participants in there, what are the things that came up the most that we needed to improve? You see up there, behavior was one of the top ones. And I think that probably resonates with most of you in this room as far as feedback that we've heard. We got to keep working on behavior in our classrooms as a community. One of the nice things about this interactive report that you all have is you can click on that bar, behavior, and you can see the top rated thoughts for all of the behavior ones and see what the community was saying on that, okay? So that gives us the, what do we need, or what can we improve in our school district? Bear with me for just a minute while I do a little reset and go to the other one now. And this is what you will have for this thought exchange. What are your hopes and dreams for students in Arlington ISD? You can see our most recent one had 3,331 participants with 2,006 original thoughts. You can see the participation language breakdown. I was super happy to see that we had 454 Spanish replies in this, and I think that's a positive thing. We got to continue to work to support others in our school district with language accessibility on things, but happy to see that. And then you can see parent, student, staff breakdown. 2,071 parents weighed in on this one, which I think is outstanding for a week-long thought exchange. And then 855 staff members along with some others. This report is broken down the same way, where it says top thoughts and topics, where you can get into these and click on them, and it says, what are your hopes and dreams for students in Arlington ISD? Top rated thought in this one, caring and concerned teachers, passionate to teach. They want to ensure that they have a connection with passionate teachers in the classroom. They want education, discipline, and a future because students need it. They want to get them ready for an ever-changing world. So you see what the sentiments were that, again, resonated with the community that we have so far. So I share that information with you, and I'm going to let you take a few minutes and look through things, talk about things at your table, and then I'm going to give you a little more in-depth look at the most recent one, the hopes and dreams one, and give you a little bit more analysis of that before we dive into some other things. So let's take about 10 minutes or so at your table. You all should have access to all of that information. Feel free to click on it, look at it, talk about the things that resonate with you, and we'll go from there. All right, if you would wrap up those conversations, please. We're going to go table by table real quick. Just a couple of high-level things. What'd you share out? Brooklyn, we'll start over with your table. What'd y'all talk about?
Well, so the idea of sixth grade being brought in with 7th, 8th, for example, it was listed as a threat in the principal's SWAT. And so a lot of good conversation about what that would look like, the kinds of things that would be good about doing that. Earlier year in fine arts, it brings upper grade to a band where they can become more mature, where they might be a little testy at the 6th grade on the elementary campus, they can slide in at a younger age on the high campus.
Right. Anything else, big picture things that stood out to you when you looked at some of the data?
One of the things we saw was kids over and over, and we would like chat GPT to take all of this and synthesize it into something that has a common through line through it more, because there was so much to try to figure out. Principal, executive staff, cabinet, that somehow to consolidate it.
Excellent, very good. How about back at your table, David and Larry? What y'all talk about over there?
We were just commenting on the common themes, especially on the thought exchange and on the SWOT analysis, like discipline and safety issues were common across this first one. And then on the second thought exchange, it mirrored a lot of what our existing or our previous strategic plan had for our mission and values.
Great. Justin over here.
I think on the thought exchanges that kind of already come up, but the emphasis on discipline, smaller class sizes. On the thought exchanges, I thought it was a little bit interesting that there does seem to be some, among the different communities that respond here, kind of broad alignment on the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I mean, there's some differentiation, but on the whole, kind of in line.
Great. Sarah Leanne?
So we noticed on the topics, and help me out because I know I'll forget something. We noticed on the topics that behavior and class sizes are kind of tied for number one, but if you look at the other words, there are things that if added up, they would be the top topic. So like on the last thought exchange, future, successful, opportunities. To me, those all mean the same thing, but they're all separated. So I think if you added all those up, that would be the top.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that feeling safe was number one on one of the thought exchanges, and then behavior was number one on the other thought exchange. So that's clear that parents want their kids to feel safe when they go to school, have a safe learning environment. And then you get into other things like class sizes, too much testing, etc.
It's kind of funny how many spots too much testing showed up in. Like you looked at some of the categories, you're like, testing showed up in community on this one. So I'm going to go back to Brooklyn's comment. I told y'all I would share some information with you, and I'm going to share a little bit about the power of thought exchange and what we're going to be doing with it next over the next couple of weeks before we get to a final plan here. But this is maybe. There we go. This is from the second thought exchange. So this is one of the tools they have, is the thought exchange administrator, where you can actually click on, this button down here that says article, and AI will synthesize everything for you. So you see the summary. This is an AI generated summary of the overview of main thoughts. Responses express a wide range of aspirations for students in Arlington ISD, focusing on safety, comprehensive education, and personal growth. Many emphasize the importance of a secure, supportive learning environment free from bullying. There's a strong desire for mental health support, equitable treatment, and inclusion, particularly for special education students. Additionally, respondents wish for engaging, high-quality instruction that fosters critical thinking, life skills, and respectful behavior. They advocate for increased teacher support, parental involvement, and fair disciplinary measures to ensure a positive and effective educational experience for all students. If you think about the things that you all just shared out, that's a pretty good summary of that stuff right there, right? So the power of these tools is pretty phenomenal when you can apply AI to help generate some of these things. This next part of this I thought was an interesting one that I would share as well. Basically, they took the respondents to this, and again, remember we had about 3,000 people respond to this question. They took the respondents and they took the ones that were really focused in on enhancing education standards as side A, one group of respondents, and then another group of respondents that really honed in heavily on safety and discipline and what was their common ground based on their ratings that they did throughout the thought exchange. You can see the common ground was both sides agree that we have to have importance on prioritizing student well-being and providing robust support systems for our kids. So 3,000 people in our system are saying, hey, we agree on this. We have to have great supports for the students in Arlington ISD. There's a common understanding that when students feel safe, supported, and valued, they're more likely to succeed academically and socially. That's where the culture piece comes in for us. This includes fostering supportive school culture, providing mental health resources, and encouraging parental involvement. All makes sense. On the left-hand side, you see some people really leaned into, we've got to increase the rigor and academic standards for educational opportunities for our kids. We got to increase the level of academic achievement and growth in our system. And then on the right-hand side, again, we got to focus on safety and discipline. We want to make sure that we maintain that safe learning environment, and I think beyond just like physical safety and learning environment, a productive learning environment for students to succeed in. So I share this with you. What we will do as a senior staff is we're going to have some great conversations tonight. This input is intended for our trustees just to stimulate your thoughts. We're going to get into talking about values and beliefs in the next section of this. and then our vision, and then the actual balanced scorecard. But I ask you as trustees and senior staff, really use this information to help guide your dialogue tonight. Again, you don't have to master 6,000 pieces of input that we have at this point. This is just community sentiment for you to really be thinking about when you're actually going through the process. I'll give you just 2 minutes to wrap this conversation up before we get into a process on values and beliefs. If anybody needs to get another drink, go ahead and grab it. If you need to take your plate out, go ahead. We'll get back going here at 5:40, and we'll start working on our values and beliefs. All right. Before we dive into the next section, I have a proposal. And trustees, this proposal is really for you to weigh in on. No offense to our senior staff, but this is something I need the board to kind of decide. I'll give you a minute to talk about it at the table. One of the challenges we have, I believe, in my time here is we have a lot of documents and a lot of words on a lot of documents sometimes. And we currently have a vision, we currently have a mission, we currently have a goal, we currently have a strategic plan, we currently have a lot of things, but if I ask most people in our system, what's our vision, they can't recite it. If I ask them what our mission is, they can't recite it. And then they remember pieces of the goal. And I think that's a challenge for us. We have to figure out how to navigate a district with 53,000 kids, 76 schools, and 8,600 employees and create a common direction. So I'd like to propose something tonight, and I don't know if this will fall flat or not. And I need your direct feedback on it. But I'd like to propose that we only hone in as a board on adopting a vision statement. And it's one statement that's really simple and clear, and that we don't adopt the district mission. Why? For the sake of clarity, but also for the sake of, I don't want to call it buy-in, but maybe enrollment. What I'd like to do is actually work with every department in every campus after this and say, so this is the board adopted vision. Now we're going to ask you to create a mission that aligns with that vision coming up, to create some synergy in our system so that we're all pointed in the same direction. So what I'd love for you to do, trustees and senior staff, just talk about it at the table for a minute or so, and I'm going to ask you for your feedback. If you tell me, hey, that's a really crazy idea, we need a mission statement, we're prepared to do a mission statement piece tonight. But if we don't need that, then we'll go ahead and we'll just work on our values and beliefs and our vision. So give you a minute to talk about pros and cons at your table, and we can go from there.
I like the full board.
All right.
Yes.
Time for a little feedback from our board. Russell, can we start with you, Melody, again back there? What are your thoughts?
We really like this, and we especially like it because we talk about schools having autonomy and their own identity, and that each campus knows what they need best. And this is a way to show them that we've heard them and we believe in them, as long as it aligns with our vision, within reason. But we also really love the idea of departments getting to do it, because then they get to have ownership as well in their own autonomy.
Great. Dave, Larry, any additional thoughts?
Everyone knows how I feel about that. So,
Larry, you good too?
It's simple, I like it.
Right. Sarah, Leanne?
Nothing additional. We liked it.
We concur.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Justin?
Nothing to add.
We're gonna not have a mission statement. I just told Jody and Greg, 3 years from now, we might look back at this and be like, what in the world? What district doesn't have a mission statement? What's happening?
Then we'll
That's right. We'll give it a try. Okay, on your table, I just handed out a paper that looks like this. I actually handed out two because we got bigger groups. And it just says value and belief statement. So I want to go through a little bit of a process in here tonight. I'd like to do some brainstorming about what we truly value as a school district and what we believe about that value. So I'll give you an example. In the top in value, you could put, in Arlington ISD, we value each and every student. And then your belief statement underneath could say something like, we believe that each and every student deserves a high-quality learning experience to propel them into a bright future, whatever it might be, right? So there's a value that you say, this is what we really value, and then the belief statement is what you think the belief is behind that value. So I'd like to go through a process tonight where we put some of these things down. It doesn't even have to be something like each and every student. It can be something like transparency. We value transparency. We value innovation. We value whatever it might be. We want to get some of these down on paper tonight for some ideas. We're going to take about 10 minutes as a table to work through these. You have 2 papers, so the idea was to get 6 values and belief statements from each table. And then we'll take a look and gather them as a senior staff, take a look and see what overlaps. And then our job is to help draft some things for the next time you come together. Ultimately, what we want to do is in board policy AE, I believe is educational philosophy. It outlines the board's core beliefs that were done back in 2013 that I don't know that we talk about enough right now. This will feed into that board policy, so we articulate what we value and believe in the school district, and it will guide our improvement planning efforts moving forward as well. Okay? So we'll take 10 minutes at your table. You brainstorm. The idea is to get 6 values and then belief statements, a belief statement for each value. And then we'll do a little share out at the end, and we'll turn it over to Jody for some vision work from there. Okay, so we're gonna move on. I'll come grab those in just a minute. What I want our trustees to hear is our next steps. So with your input on the values and beliefs, our senior staff now will take these, start to look at the themes in all of them, start putting them together, and we will have a draft for you by June the 5th. Okay? We're gonna narrow it down to probably 4, 5, 6 at the most, just really about what we value. But what I would ask you to really think about as trustees over the next couple of weeks is, how are these gonna be used? Well, we're gonna lean on these values a lot in our system. If we say we value innovation, guess what we're going to do? We're gonna lean into the ways to bring innovation into our school system on a regular basis. If we value transparency, we're gonna make sure we look through the lens of transparency for our community in everything that we do and say. So these values are gonna help guide our work moving forward as a school district over the next few years. So please really think about what are the most important values that we need to articulate for our community and what's your belief behind them. And then we'll bring you a draft coming up, and we'll do some editing on June the 5th, and we'll go from there. From here, I'm gonna turn it over to Jody, and Jody's gonna start working with us on vision. There is a handout in front of you on vision. There's one on mission. You can fold that up and throw it away now if you want.
Love Natalie's table.
We're gonna hone in on the vision one and go from there, and I'll come grab your values and beliefs.
Usually can have my notes together versus when it puts us on the spot, I'm always like, oh, I should have said, oh, I should have. Driving home, I'm always like, oh, I want to change my answer. Yep, no, totally.
You might be correct.
I did not choose you all to rephrase.
Yes.
Best practice, right?
Get one out of Yes, Tyson about me to do this.
Come with us.
What's the devil worship sign? What's the sign of the devil worship?
We're ready, Jody? Yep.
Oh my God.
It is.
No, that's 2 hours.
Or it's 2 hours.
With a vision statement. The vision mission, as you know, the mission has, we've already decided that we're putting that aside, but as you all might remember, we work with the community. That was part of our work with the community, is to really get some feedback from them. Like, what do you envision for the future of Arlington ISD? And we generated a lot of comments and ideas, and then we had this big list of words that we then came back to our second community meeting, and we said, let's narrow this scope. What are the most important things from this that we want to really hone in on when we talk about direction, where we want to go? Ultimately, board members, it is up to you all to adopt a vision statement. You have to be comfortable with it. I'm going to tell you what's in here are ideas that we garnered from the community, some thoughts that based on those ideas, maybe some examples that we might build from or build off of, or pick one that we love. But when you think about a vision statement, you're thinking about what are we working towards. It should be a short statement describing clear and inspirational desired future state. That's a vision statement. The best vision statements, they don't need to be wordy, they don't need to be trendy, no buzzwords. They can be super short. I've seen some as short as all kids, every student every day. That's their, and it may sound like a tagline, may sound like a motto, but a lot of districts we're seeing are going to be really more condensed. Because why? Your staff can remember it. It still means something. It's inspirational.
You can fit on a pen.
It can fit on a pen. That's right. So here's your current vision statement, and I would say it is. It's simple. It's concrete. Arlington ISD will be a premier school district and a leader in education. Does that rock your world? That's up to you all to decide. You also have a couple of mottos that we've kind of identified. More than remarkable education, that's on your logo, which is, by the way, I think y'all have one of the coolest logos of all time. And then you have I'm going to call it a motto or a tagline, powered by possibilities. That was from your last strategic plan, and those are some really powerful words. So I just throw that up there. Dr. Smith, you said, we've got all kinds of documents and all kinds of things, but I think at some point you need to really hone in on, what is it gonna be? So we've got all these sort of really cool words and things, but let's figure out what that one thing is gonna be. When we finally, our second community meeting, we took all of the list of words. If you wanna see the full list of words, I do have it pulled up on a different document. But this is what we identified as the most important to that group that day. Pride and confidence, integrity and honesty, community investment, all in. I kept hearing, community, what we're producing and putting out into the community. I also heard, when we talk about potential, every student, you were with me in one of the meetings, and somebody said something really profound. It's every student has a place, and there's a place for every student. I don't remember.
Yeah, Stacy Humbles said
Yes, it was
that.
really cool. It's they belong. They feel like they belong. Dream came up, and that's kind of a cool idea because the city of Arlington has this, what is it, the Dream
City.
Dream City. So that's kind of fun to maybe capitalize on that. Resilient, thriving. So those are kind of the key words. And then we took a stab at, with those keywords, what could be a vision. I'm not saying any of these will be the vision. I'm just saying these are some options. And you've got some opportunities to talk at your tables at this time. I want you to look at the ones that we've offered as examples. Maybe talk at your tables. Is there one that you like specifically? Do you have something else that you would offer up as an alternative? And then let's have some discussion around that, if that's okay.
That was great.
So we're going to give you about 5-10 minutes, 10 minutes to work on. Is there something in there that resonates with you? And if you come to consensus at your table, and if there's something else you want to offer, let's be ready to discuss that in 10 minutes. Yes? Oh, and by the way, we have cookies over here. If anybody just hasn't had enough food and sugar, they're amazing.
I'll bring them around.
They're really good. From Waxahachie, they have a cute little bakery over there.
Oh, that's not really good. I could use it.
They take 2 pictures of ice cream in the middle.
We only have one group that actually followed instructions. And it was come up with your favorite or one statement that you wanted to present.
There are 9 on the
So
wall.
now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Bunches of dream teams.
But what we'd like for you to do, we've got a little bit of time. We're going to ask each person to grab a marker. We're going to power rate these. Okay. And this is on your honor. You get to pick the 2 that you like the best. And then let's come back and talk about
Not the
it.
2 that you like on page 1, the 2
The
that
2
you like
that
break
totally-
up.
Out of all of them.
So let's review them real quickly and we'll call you table 1. Fulfilling community dreams. What was your thought about this?
I took these things. It is, every community, every parent has a dream for their child. We want to create a system where we are assisting them in fulfilling or reaching those dreams.
Alright. The dream team vision. I'm assuming.
That's the ones that follow the rules Creating exceptional experiences where dreams become reality.
That was one of the ones that was on the, okay.
It was.
Or just a reword of that.
Yeah.
Creating exceptional experiences where dreams become reality. So it's same thing, but just different words.
Yes,
So we'll
and
call
the
this
hashtags
We'll
are
call this
extra, they're not part of the vision statement. They're extra.
They're for marketing. They're for
Just in
marketing.
case.
American Dreams District.
I think for the purpose of check marks, call that one.
Yeah.
Because there's a
Yes,
concept
just
that
call
runs,
one.
yeah, call that one. There's a concept that runs true through that, okay.
Original Dream Team.
The OD,
Our primary was the top one, but the alternate is the second one.
Making every dream matter and empowering every dream. By the way, I see a theme here, I think you'll like the dream idea, which I'm gonna just tell you, I love because it's sort of like, it balances with the city and it's like a cohesive
Unifying.
thing happening. Okay, the table that really doesn't follow instructions. Go ahead.
Overachievers.
No, our overachievers.
we got them hyped up on cookies and then we told them to only do one.
They took they had multiple cookies and multiple vision
Yeah.
statements. How about that?
Are there two sheets over here?
Now we want to speak to the.
Natalie, you wanna help?
Yes. I'm gonna read these out loud. Okay, so we like the concept of dream, and so we have multiple versions that we incorporated that. So the dream district, where potential meets purpose and every child thrives. The second one is empowering students, transforming communities, building the dream. C, yeah, okay, so 3, okay, and the Dream City's Dream District, innovation, opportunity, and purpose for every child. Then 4 is where dreams begin, purpose leads, and communities rise. Oh, so, I see, there was very
Okay, so I'm gonna ask everybody to get a marker without running into each other, how many.
Jody, do you know what, I think, since we're going to transition from this to something else, take a 5-minute break after the selection, does that
Yeah.
sound good? Let everybody take a quick.
So you can call us in the office and tell us.
Let your top 2 take a quick 5-minute break and go.
Jody, we have a process clarifying question.
Yes.
Can you vote for the same one twice?
So I have another question.
Yes, you can.
Okay. I knew that was one that was coming.
Probably doesn't work.
Second question.
I did not say that.
Are on that
Yeah,
left side chart paper.
that's a good question.
I believe there's 4.
We wrote
I think those 4 stand alone.
They're all
So
standing.
they're all separate.
And they're numbered.
Stand alone.
Sarah, they're numbered.
Okay.
Okay, these 2 stand alone.
Okay.
That's
These
the
are
one.
One.
You should have sent it to Shelley.
So you can
Good
put 2,
question.
yes, you can put your 2 votes on one, statement if you like it that much. Ready, go.
No pressure, but this is a really big deal.
We can bring everybody back together, we're gonna round this out. We've got clearly 2 obvious winners. I've heard some discussion about, we really would like to have a tagline come out of this too. I think that's probably phase 2, maybe a different discussion, but I heard some really good suggestions for a potential tagline. But it looks like we have 2 clear potential winners here that we're literally off by 1, but so I want to talk about this. And so I was asking our communications expert, because she deals in this world all the time. But Veronica, can you talk about like what we were just talking about and sharing, and then also we want to talk about that word rise, because there may be another option instead of rise, maybe thrive.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. We originally had both of those written down, and that's what we.
we thought 5 was too many.
No way. I find that so hard to believe.
Yeah, the reason why I like thrive a little bit better is just because rise implies that
Yes.
we're not there.
Yes.
Like we're at a deficit, and so visually, I don't want to give someone that impression, right? Psychologically, subconsciously. So the other thing I really liked about that is just the alliteration. The ability to pause after each phrase is very marketable, and it also makes it much easier for people to remember. So from a marketing perspective, it's a little shinier, if you will. But I do like thrive.
All right. Any other comments about?
Now that we put Thrive, does anybody want to change the?
No.
Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, I have a suggestion and a question.
Yeah.
My suggestion would be, can we say purpose grows?
Where dreams begin, purpose grows or leads.
Leads.
I'm also, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I just feel like when you're in kindergarten, you don't really know your purpose.
Yeah.
And like, it's finding your passion.
Yeah.
As you come up through the pipeline as a student, and your purpose grows. And like, as a staff member, as a parent, the adults in our district, they help our kids find their purpose. That's why I like purpose grows. So I just wanted to kind of see where y'all's thoughts were on that.
But as, you know, it's also for our employees, and, you know, purpose leads is very strong as an employee. I know, all right, I'm gonna have a purpose, and this is gonna be what leads us to the next level.
Okay. And my only other question was, I'm stuck on communities plural.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm really stuck on that. I like how it sounds. It sounds like, wow, that's a great vision statement. Or one, we need to find some unity, we want to elevate our school district.
But we have a lot of diverse communities within Arlington ISD.
So if anyone else.
I had the same feeling, which is the comment I was going to make. It feels like we talk about ourselves like the dream city, all these things in terms of Arlington, and yet it's plural there, which insinuates that there are more. And I think the idea around unity was pretty strong. So that was my question. So it's like, why are we?
Changing it to thrive makes it easier to say our community thrives.
The only thing, I like that too. The only other thing I would say is when I hear communities, I think about when we're producing the next generation of leaders, they're not going to just be here. They're going to go out into the world. And so that's a reflection of Arlington ISD. And so we're saying communities rise as a result of what we do is
Right.
plural.
And that's how I took it. Kind of like UT's model.
I didn't go the way for you guys.
I think what we can do is, if you're all okay with it, we've got your top two choices.
Yep.
And I think everybody in the room feels pretty good about what we see up there, right? Let us play with it a little bit to see if we can tweak some things. Because I think what we want to get to consensus, and we can bring some things back to you with this being the heartbeat of it. We can bring things back to you on June the 5th and see what we can land on. But let us play with it a little bit if that's okay.
I think what we do know is that there's a dream in here.
That's right. We like the dream.
We like the dream. All right.
Is the last bullet student-centered enough? Should it be where students' dreams begin? Purpose leads and community thrives?
I don't know, because don't we want it to appeal to students, staff, and community?
Community, yeah.
Will you have a value
Parents,
statement
dreams.
near this, Dr. Smith, that involves students?
That's right.
Yeah, you will have a value statement residing right by this, that specifically talks about students.
And we can again massage that a little bit, but this is the trickiness, and I heard this at 2 different tables, maybe 3, if I remember right. That idea of, do we need to be very student-centric in our vision, or does it need to be inclusive of all our 8,600 employees and community members as well? And that's a tricky balance that I think we gotta make a decision eventually on. So we can play with those things and come back to you with some ideas on June 5th. Yes. One quick thing for our trustees real quickly. I forgot to share this with you at the beginning, but I think our trustees will know I had a visit from a former employee today. That former employee met with me and wanted to share some things with me, and she said, when you go, you have a special meeting tonight, right? And I said, yes. And she said, when you go to the board workshop, give them this, a jar full of kisses, and see if they know who it's from.
It's that lady that used to always come.
Cindy Keller.
That's right. So this is Cindy saying, just a reminder to everybody to keep it simple tonight. There you go.
All right.
All Greg?
Okay, I am meeting some of you for the first time, so I was encouraged that Buck tells really good stories. So Buck's usually the starter and I'm the closer, but here's my story.
Okay.
So I got up early. We live on 300 acres in Graham. I actually did some things with horses, I did some things with cows. I Zoomed with you, still in my ranch gear, working on the scorecard. I said, I promise I'm gonna clean that up before I head over there. So I had the grass in the yard cut. My wife was coming in, driving in right as I was driving away, and that happens a lot these days. And so we paused for a little bit, we chit-chatted, and then I said, man, the yard looks good, and man, the sun's coming up, look at the cows. And I said, Otika, did you ever think in your wildest dreams this is where we would be living? I thought that was fair to say, Greg, you're not a part of my wildest dreams.
How long have you been married?
Yeah.
That's fair.
Pat me on the back. There you go. I was encouraged.
Good job.
Okay, thank you. I'll pass the buck.
Thank you.
She said, can you tell us?
I just wanted a story.
Yeah, okay. A couple of things to frame up, and when you look at this scorecard, it's purposefully meant, as we said on Monday with the senior leader team, to kind of strip strategy down to the studies. So sometimes when we think about strategic plans, there's a lot of things on websites, and you can do all that. That is not what we're trying to do. Like, we're trying to get this thing down to the key words, so we purposefully, it's just a word chart, and we're stripping that thing down to studies. Now, one little thought on scorecards, just that maybe a North Star for us to kind of stay focused on. I personally, this is real challenging because you're trying to provide direction for performance management and clarity, especially in a district this size, and transparency to our community that obviously has a dream, okay? And so it's challenging to jump all three: transparency, clarity, right? Be sophisticated enough to drive a performance management system. Does that make sense? Like, to try to thread, it's not jumping hurdles, it's like trying to thread three needles. And then I heard a superintendent the other day say this, and I liked it. It's like, if we leave a board meeting and we walk outside and we drop this document and it blows, like there's a good Texas windstorm and there's a Tractor Supply nearby, and he said it blows over the Tractor Supply. Which, by the way, that's a really good place to have a Tractor Supply right by the boardroom. It's very convenient for me. But it blows over there, and someone, a reasonable adult, picks it up. They have a general sense of what we're trying to accomplish, even if they're not engaged. And I was like, you know what? That's clear. Like, if you have the thing, is the work infinitely more complicated than what you're going to see tonight? Yes. The senior leaders in this room have 30 plates each in the air that they're trying to keep spinning, at least. But the challenge here is to strip it down to what's the core element, what's the core element. So I just wanted to say that about the some trustees, does that make sense? Like, we're trying to distill, crystallize it. Just in order to frame up the feedback for tonight, we want to capture your comments in likes and wonderings. So something that you like, and then something, or something that you're wondering. Does that make sense? Your senior leaders or your subject matter experts have been in this room at least 4 times. Is it this room?
Yep.
Yeah, this room. Just looks different. In this room, 4 times, really trying to pull this thing apart, and kind of rebuild it, if that makes sense. And right off the bat, Matt, do you want to talk about where this?
Yeah, one of the things starting in January when you met with Buck and Jody, and then continuing in March, we heard loud and clear as a board, you didn't want to lose some of the work that you've done. You want to see that embedded in this strategic plan. It may look something a little bit different, may need to be tweaked. It might not be one of the priorities. It might be a strategic objective, but you wanted that work to continue. And so over the course of the time with our senior staff and our cabinet members, we've been working to make sure that that stuff lives in this document as well in the strategic plan moving forward. Reminder that those key progress measures in there were all designed to be one-year things. We're supposed to be reporting out to you when we complete those things. We've been doing that. You've gotten the board reports. You know which ones we've completed already. You know which ones are coming up. So those key progress measures were really meant for this year, but the idea of the priorities can live on in our strategic plan moving forward. And frankly, that gives our senior leaders and our principals some consistency that we really appreciate. We don't want all of that to just be dropped overnight and swing somewhere else. So just know that we've been working to make sure that that's embedded in what you'll see tonight too.
A good concrete example is right here. This is right here. It's the descriptor that just totally lined up with this priority one student growth. Does that make sense? So like this descriptor, like all the words like that. And so each of these and pieces of this are living in other, what, to the extent we can, we'll try to point out where they live in the document as we go through it. The thing that I like about the balanced scorecard, and this is a Kaplan and Norton Harvard Business School in 1990, we need to be clear about the difference between an objective, strategic objective, and a strategic action, and we need to be clear about the difference between a lead measure and a lag measure. Think about it, like what the objective is the what we're trying to accomplish. The action is the how we're going about trying to accomplish the what. What do we look at along the way, and what do we look at the end of the year or at the end of this Smith, for around 4 year, 25, 26, 26, 27, 27, 28, 28, 29. 4 year horizon. Does that make sense? So you trustees, y'all get quite a bit of training on establishing these outcomes. It's not tonight in X to Y by Z format. Like you probably hear that in your training. So X is our current state, Y is our desired state, and then Z is by when. We've gone ahead and plugged in 2029, an assumption at the end of the 2029 school. Does that make sense? So if you go to ISO or LSG or any other training, I just want you to have a comfort level to go, shit, like that's the way. Now the difference is if you scroll up, Jody, just a little bit, all that you're required to do by law, arguably, is 1.1. Think about that. That's by law. As long as you have that, of course, I don't know what's going to happen with House Bill 3 as of today. It doesn't matter. That's a conversation for another workshop. But then what the beauty of this is, you're establishing clear strategy for 4 buckets, the 4 S's we like to say: students, staff, stakeholder, and stewardship. So we're getting clear about expecting outcomes with all 4 of those. Dr. Smith, you look like you're having a thought.
No, not at all.
Okay. So,
I definitely don't have any thoughts. I wanted to beat somebody to saying that, so.
Okay. So we're not getting into these tonight, although we captured a few of our comments from this past Monday, and just left 2 days ago, just left them in there. And Jody, if you'll scroll down before, Darla earlier and her team and Scott, we were saying, do we just take them out? Because we had said that on Monday. But I want to make sure everybody knows, we decided to leave our notes in the middle. But I don't, trustees, I just don't want you to perseverate on this stuff in the middle, because that's literally just notes. But if those notes help you get a better feel for what the objectives are. There's a big concept here that Peter Drucker taught, and that probably is what drove Kaplan and Norton to build the scorecard. And Peter Drucker was saying was, for the board or the strategic team, top tier team, you need to anchor the left and the right. So you need to anchor the objective, and you need to anchor the corresponding outcome, and then you need to stay out of the middle. See, now what we're talking about is building a performance management system where you can lean into that philosophy of staying out of the middle, but you're going to hear periodic and systematic reports of how the stuff is going in the middle. Does that make sense? And so if we do it right, the senior leader team, about the time a question emerges from a trustee, the superintendent says regularly, well, that's part of what we're gonna go over in next month's strategic roundtable. Oh, okay, that's good, glad to hear. Or that's the roundtable in October, before we'll get to that. Would you like to know something before this?
I want to add context. So Greg's calling it a strategic roundtable. My hope is that you start to take the mindset of our workshop and that you think during the school year, we have a few workshops that are a little extended in length about one of those specific areas, and we provide you an update on that, right? We did it on some of our priorities this year, but that's what our workshops would be for, is to have some extended time to go deep. Board, you said this is the objective, here's the outcome we're reaching for, so we're gonna get into the middle columns in that workshop and tell you how it's going, what we're seeing data-wise, what's coming next, and have some opportunity for dialogue with the board together with staff on that. So that's where you get into the middle pieces of it, but our ask of the board is really hone in on those strategic objectives and hone in on the right-hand side, the outcomes that we want at the end. And then our job as a leadership team, as administrators, is to figure out how to get there. That's the work of a strategic plan, and we align the steps and provide you updates along the way.
And by doing what the superintendent just said very well, you have built a performance management system. So I've heard this said, anyone can create a strategic plan, anyone. Very few can make it into a performance management system.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you all probably saw at SLI, if I could just say that it's a performance management system. Like that's what, and I love the way you just framed it up. Okay, so what we're gonna do, and Stephen, are you prepared?
Greg, hold on, we get a question.
Sorry, thank you.
In this management system, is it going to state which stakeholders, which whomever is responsible for each one?
Yeah, I mean, it shook out pretty quickly and organically, you know, that curriculum is the yellow, but there are exceptions. There's actually, you know what I'm saying, HR fell comfortably into the blue on staff, your public relations, I'm saying the long term, but your public relations team fell comfortably into the community, and then your finance and operations team fell comfortably. So the answer is yes. One of the myths that we talked about on Monday that you have to be careful of, you're trying to go away from silos. So you're trying to get the senior leader team to cross work, because on any given day, a senior leader team that is not Stephen might be critical to the delivery of that action.
Yeah.
Right? And so he can have it in the yellow part, but he knows then we've got to have this collaboration.
Yeah.
So,
The reason why I'm asking is because in transparency, we're several years in to a current strategic plan, and you know, I'm glad we're doing this, but I'm not just thinking about where we want to go, I'm also keeping an eye on where we're coming from. And a lot of the feedback that I've gotten about our current one, and I agree with it, is when you don't clarify, you know, how like someone's work or a team's work or several teams' work is like, I'm responsible for what, that's how things fall through.
right.
So let me add to that. This isn't designed to go into that level of detail.
Okay.
From this, imagine those middle columns. A deeper document that's directly aligned to this is our district improvement plan, which directly identifies who's responsible for what.
Okay, and
This
they
is-
be aligned.
Correct.
Okay.
And so these are higher level. This is, you know, community transparency and work from a board level, but ultimately it's my job to make sure we're doing all of those things. And it's my job to make sure that that district improvement plan is really clear on who's responsible for what and how we're getting there.
Love it.
I think that's a really good explanation. One quick add-on to that we worked on earlier this week and the time before, that's really important. I think links up not directly, but indirectly to what you're saying. And we did this on Monday, and Stephen did a really good job kicking us off before, like first one up. You cannot have clarity on an outcome unless you isolate the objective. If the objective has 4 things in it, you can't set the measure. You see, and so I know sometimes people say, well, wow, that's 4 different big things. Well, we're isolating the objectives so we can isolate the outcome measure.
You have to have lead and lag.
Correct. The objective has to be kind of a standalone thing, or the measures get all jumbled up. We don't know. So we tried to really, the team did a great job the last few meetings in really bringing these objectives apart. And that's a standalone objective. That's a standalone objective. That's a standalone objective. And then, so, you know, at the first meeting, I love it. You said, I want to test this by going all the way over to the right and talking about the measures, and then I reserve the right to come back over here and say if that's the right thing. That was perfect. So we left that side, and we went over here, had a great conversation about this, and then went back over here, and I think we added a word or something, you know, from that conversation. Okay, so the way we're queuing this up is about 10 minutes. And Stephen, are you prepared to like give them a quick run through?
I can.
Yeah, so you had a chance to look at it. Anything that jumps out at you, we're not, but maybe 10 minutes total. A senior leader member is going to talk about the words on the page, and then we're going to capture likes, trustees, so something you like, and then something that you're wondering. Is that fair enough? And Joey's going to capture those live in person. Turn it over to you.
Okay, so this section is really around student growth. And so you'll see it as we kind of go through each of the objectives on the far left-hand side. We progress from the actual achievement of students all the way.
Do we have a printout of this?
We only have we're going to focus on, no, we do not. Do you want one? I guess the
Okay.
answer is it.
You said earlier that we had seen this before and had time to go over it. This is the first time.
I might have misspoken, because I think this is the first time you're seeing it.
Okay, all right.
I
Just want to
believe this
clarify
is
that.
your first, yes. The senior leader team has
Yeah.
gone through it a few times to get to this
Okay.
point, yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so you're going to see as we advance down from 1.1 to 1.4 that we're talking about student growth, but we're working through various components of that objective. So the first one is about advancing academic growth and achievement. And the idea around that is you're going to see in the word advance, there's this embedded kind of inference to the idea that you're going to constantly be growing and improving. So it doesn't matter if you're a student that's already what you would consider excelling, you can go beyond that. If you're a student that's struggling, we're going to advance that growth too. And the way we would measure it is on the far right-hand side, which is all the academic indicators that we would look for. So of course, all of our screeners, the STAR data, our graduation rates, and then when we talk about CCMR outcomes, we're not just talking about the holistic score, although that is something that we have in the system. We're actually looking more in depth around what are the actual indicators that make up CCMR and which kids are excelling in those areas. So APIB scores, TSIA readiness, military readiness, students that are earning certificates for career pathways. So those will be the ways we would measure whether students are growing academically. On the second one's about the learning experience that students have, and the way we were kind of framing this one is really more about choice, meaning our students having opportunities to access and participate in programs that are relevant to them and are directly aligned to what their individual interests are. So you're going to see on the far right-hand side, what is the enrollment in the current programs we have, meaning is that growing? Are we expanding the offerings that we have across the system in terms of programs of choice or specialized programs? And then we also thought it would be important to integrate what students feel about their experience, because if you're talking about a high quality experience, there has to be, and they have to have a feeling that that is high quality to them. So in the student satisfaction engagement survey, there are questions where we can pull from that survey to help inform that. One thing we also talked about that would be really important is that we integrate into that survey students' understanding or self-assessment about their acquisition or mastery of executive function skills or soft skills, because that's one of the things that we know in order for them to be successful outside of school, their learning experience has to build those things for them. The last bullet you'll see on the right-hand side around 1.2 is around just numbers, and we talk specifically around extracurricular opportunities because there's some research that shows that highly engaged students in school are engaged in things that are outside of academics. So we want to know how many of our students participate in things in the school environment outside of the classroom to measure that they're having an experience that's considered high quality. The third one is 1.3 is around an inclusive culture of respect, support, and continuous improvement. This is actually aligned to very specifically to one of the things that are in the board priorities right now. And one of the things we talked about in terms of measuring that objective was the student satisfaction engagement survey. There are elements in there where kids report out about how they feel about their experience in Arlington, whether it's inclusive, whether they feel seen, kind of the whole child idea. We also thought about data related to the parent satisfaction survey and how they're reporting about their students' experience, and then what do the numbers look like in terms of student retention? If we're losing students, what's the reason why we're losing them? And then attendance data. Kids who feel included at school, feel supported and seen, come to school. And then the last one is around creating a safe and productive learning environment. One question, the reason why you'll notice it in red is because we're looking for feedback specifically around the word productive. What does that word mean to you? In terms of measure, before we dive into that, you'll see one of the things we looked at is student recidivism data, meaning students who are having discipline issues. Are they rehabbing those same scenarios or those issues, or are those students actually correcting their behavior? Using the campus safety survey, looking to see if there's a reduction in the total number of offenses that students have that are mandatory reporting offenses, so the more egregious ones. And then, of course, more information that we can pull from the student satisfaction survey about their own safety, because in that survey, students report, do they feel safe at school, and if not, where are the areas where they don't? So that's just a big idea around student growth, yeah.
So one of the reasons that this is red is, and Julia, is that the final the final outcome measure? And when we were doing the work on Monday, you have to make sure you understand the objective to make sure you have the right outcome measure. I think that's what got us to, and then, okay, there's productive. We need a little more clarification to make sure, we're not saying it needs to go, we're not saying it needs to say, we're just saying we need to know what it means so that we can find the right outcome measure to align to. Is that a fair way?
Yes, because you'll notice on the far right-hand side, those are all measures around safety and emotional safety or physical safety, but that doesn't necessarily relate to productivity. And so the question that we've had is, what do you mean by, what does productive mean to you in terms of an environment that's productive for students, so that we can think about, okay, well, how will we measure that idea?
Now, follow-up to that is, trustees, does this productivity, is it covered, now that you see, is that stuff up there is what we mean when we mean productive?
Greg, as a reminder, 1.3 and 1.4 are two of the board's priorities, so it's worded exactly as you had it in your document, which is why we put that in red. We didn't want to change anything that the board had already established without having.
Dr. Smith, when you had the thought exchange up earlier and it had the thing in the middle, lines right. Absolutely. And that was part of the back, we're like, okay, I'm glad we pulled, if we had a question about pulling these over to here, I erased it. Because there it was. That's what parents are saying they want.
I'll add just from board discussions in the spring and fall when we were landing on the priorities for the district in some of that language. I think we were talking about that word productive, meaning the learning environment. Like it's a learning environment where everybody can do good work. It's free of distraction, maybe. It's all of those things. It's not just like safety and hardening of facilities. It's the classroom experience where students can actually be productive and work really well. I think was, if I remember our dialogue right, that's what that word productive was about.
So I leave it, trustees, but then you feel comfortable that you were worried that there's some outcome measure that we're missing that's not.
That was what our group was asking for clarity around, because if we want to measure productivity, then how
are you measuring?
Yeah, is it engagement? It could be an engagement measure. There's ways we could do it.
For that, it's clear, is there a way to measure how often instruction stops and classrooms are disrupted? I don't think there is, but that's exactly what Dr. Smith said is exactly what we meant by productive there.
Can we make an assumption that if we have productive classroom satisfaction is going to be up and we're going to see better results in these measures?
Yeah.
Okay. I would think so.
I would think that the discipline, having to stop and document a discipline, that's interrupting that classroom instruction time. If those offenses are going down, it's not a direct.
Things are unproductive.
But it's an indirect measure. That's a good
Yeah,
standard.
and I think I see discipline, I see attendance, I see student surveys, so I feel like I'm seeing the right things on there to do the check on that. And trustees, just to be clear, right now, we're just saying the tool, just know to the extent possible, those will be expressed in X to Y by Z. Some of them will be really hard to do, I'm just telling you. And then some of them we can probably figure out how to grab the data, but to the extent we can, we'll isolate those to X to Y by Z. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Wertz. We have got a good summary of priority one. So trustees, what do you like? What are you wondering about priority one?
Is this all, 1.1 to 1.4, that is all of it, correct? There's nothing, okay.
Priority one, and you've got some more information headed your way after the feedback tonight. A lot of information coming your way after the feedback tonight. Truthfully, we started to jump in here, but it's like, wait a minute, let's check the pulse with the board before we get into the work of the middle.
Correct. One of the things I think we highlighted on our board priorities was early childhood education. And when it comes to this section, where do we specifically address?
You would see it there.
In early literacy up at the top.
You'd see it in the strategies.
So and then we started to remove everything out there, and because of what you said, okay, maybe leave that in.
That was gonna be my early literacy, that's why.
So the question, just what we would do is the specific areas where we're focusing, you'll see those in the 1.1, 1.12, 1.13, those strategies will be listed there specifically. The objective on the far left-hand side, it encompasses academic growth and achievement across all parts of the system, but the parts that we want to zero in and focus on, you're going to see them we put a simple example there, like early literacy, because we know that's one of them. That would be one, but we'll also have others that will be listed to help articulate what you're talking about.
Yeah, so we like early literacy. I heard that.
Early literacy.
Early literacy.
But you still have your House Bill 3 goals, and that's where this lives,
Yeah, but one of the things we're concerned with as a board is like how quickly are we making and supporting teachers in the shift to the science of reading, and what are the measures there to give us indication that works, that groundwork's being done to increase student outcomes.
All right, is there wondering in that, sir?
Well, no, I mean,
Okay.
I mean, I don't know where that would fit, and then that starts to get it out of our lane, a strategy, into implementation.
Right, and I tonight with the wonderings, you can go in and wonder about some of the implementation. I'm just telling you, like that's.
Yeah, that is definitely something that would go into that column.
Okay.
Sorry, I wasn't reading that column.
for me.
How well are we supporting teachers in making the shift to the science of reading for early childhood literacy?
It's a great wonder. And that's helping inform us as we continue to work. Great example of a wonder. All right, other likes and wondering to the priority one, thank you for sharing.
So I like that, it's very clear that we are going to take into account that all student experiences and the whole child experience from K through 12 needs to be looked at when assessing academic growth. I like that you mentioned that what they're doing, what they're involved in, where they're thriving, where their passion lies, it's all going to lead to academic growth. So I like that that was integrated as a priority and as a measurable piece. So I really appreciate that.
And I would argue that it aligns with what we heard from the community as well.
Absolutely, I love it.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Yes, sir.
Can we go back to the
Scorecard?
chart? Yeah.
Told Joe to get ready to jump back up.
Hey, can you scroll down to the very bottom? I just want to read it. So on the 1.4, and maybe I missed this, the and productive language to me is duplicative of what I think we have in mind in 1.2, because all the stuff on the right side for 1.4 is keep to safe. And so I think maybe that's not a necessary inclusion of.
Well, I'm pretty sure, sir, that's why it was highlighted.
We want to make sure you all agree with that.
Are you okay with?
I'm okay with taking that
As
out.
our trustees, did we just take productive out of this because we know that the things we're talking about with productive live in other places?
I like it there because what we mean there is creating a safe an environment that's free of distractions so that learning can take place. And that's what we mean by productive.
I think then it should be focused. Because productive to me has a end result that is measured in a different way than what's on the right
Safe
side.
and focused learning. Is that a
Could you say something
We're
more?
not measuring the number of
Create safe
assignments
and
that the student
measurable.
completes, right?
Not like something where
But
you're
you're talking about the
saying
distraction-free environment.
measurable.
Yeah. We gotta somehow encompass that distraction-free environment.
Maybe, do we want to capture that on the wondering? Is everybody good with that? On 1.4, what's the right word for it to be a distraction-free environment?
Perfect.
Is that all right? That's a wondering. That's, again, not solving everything tonight. We're just trying to get out of your minds what you're wondering. Okay, thank you. That's good. Great example of wondering. Anything else on students?
Yeah.
This one.
I assume this document is just a high level, 1,000-foot overview. But when I look at the students, I'm constantly going back to the disparity in the percentages for the testing between the different disaggregated demographics. So I'm hopeful that in this plan, somewhere deep down in the weeds, it's going to break down, here's how we're going to take this group from here to here.
So Jody, I thank you, sir. The wondering is, where in the plan do we address disparity with performance among subgroups?
The sub-hubs, yeah.
Okay, is that a fair way to say it? Good.
Is it fair to say, did I hear you say? Do you see how I did that?
Yeah, very good.
Did I hear you say that you don't want to just know that in a report, for example, we want to go from a 60 to a 67, but you want us to know as trustees, what is the plan to get us there as well?
Yeah, that's more generalized than what I meant. I'm
Okay.
talking specific subgroups. I mean, you look at the makeup of this district, where you've got African American, you've got Hispanic, you've got
Right, but
the
you are
disparities in
asking,
those scores. So I'm specifically asking, where in here do we address if the African American population is scoring super low on these items? What are we doing to make sure that we close that gap?
right, but you want to make sure that that information comes to us as a board and that we're able to see that action steps are
We
being
get it
taken?
automatically as a board. What are we doing to set it as a priority to close those gaps?
Can I ask a clarifying question, Larry?
Yeah.
So I think you're saying you want to make that a priority, that we're addressing that in our action steps. You're hopeful when we sit at that roundtable or workshop that we're able to say, here's what we're doing for this specific student group and what we intend the outcomes to be.
Yeah, because I agree with the outcome of us wanting to be this premier district.
Yeah.
But when the majority of our population is scoring low, no matter what you do for the folks who are scoring high, you're never going to reach that until you address these low scores.
Yeah. And I think one of the things, like when you take a look at the data sheet, Jody, on the data column on the right-hand side, when we talk about STAR and EOC results in EOY, M-Class, and EOY Circle, you're talking about being able to break it down into student group to be able to specifically say, here are we want these outcomes to be gap closing outcomes. And when we sit in a workshop, we want to be able to talk about what the strategy, we want to hear what your strategy is to address those.
That's what I was trying to ask, is yes.
But I assume it's not going to be there. It's going
That's
to be
right.
somewhere in the second or third.
Yeah, and our job is to figure out the plan, the second and third column, and the deeper plan behind all of this to get to that point where you're elevating the priority, saying, hey, we want some gap closing outcomes in this district.
And you mentioned district improvement plan, that also had me thinking of campus improvement plans, because some campuses are actually successful in closing those gaps, while others, the gap is wider. So I feel like that's where campus improvement plans can really, leverage what they need to do to support the bigger goal there.
So part of this whole work is by clarifying strategic plan, our district improvement plan and campus improvement plan should align with what we're setting on this. That's where the work happens in our system.
Okay, Jody, go back to lights and one rooms, please. So we're good on priority one? Okay. We're going to transition to priority two. Scott?
Sure. So priority 2, as you can see, is engage staff to ensure strong, motivated, and well-supported workforce. There's also 4 subsets of the strategic objectives that we listed, so we'll go through each one of those. 2.1, retain and attract a high-quality workforce, and just like Dr. Wertz pointed out, we're going to skip over to the right column and look at outcomes that are intended in order to achieve that strategic objective. So what we have listed for retaining and attracting high-quality workforce is a voluntary attrition rate that is below market average for AISD comparison districts, positive results on a new hire employee experience survey, full staffing for all positions, competitive pay and benefits for all staff, and fully trained administrators and supervisors and effective management practices. Believe it or not, many of you probably know this, but the #1 reason for job satisfaction or lack of job satisfaction actually isn't pay, it's relationship with your supervisor. So that's 2.1. Do you want me to continue, or do you want to pause?
Yeah, let's scroll on. One thing I noted this earlier. I'm just going to tell you, but we had some of these things over here, and we were like, no, wait a minute, that's an action.
Yep.
That's a lead measure.
Yeah.
So you're looking at notes. We just parked them there
Right.
just so you can see what we had in the notes. Okay. Yeah, roll on, please.
All right, and 2.2, establish an inclusive culture of respect, support, and continuous improvement for all staff. And again, if you slide over to the far right column, those outcomes, intended outcomes are employee new hire experience survey with positive results, staff retention data above market average, staff satisfaction survey and retention satisfaction index score, positive results, staff attendance measurement, achieving best practice threshold for non-FMLA absences. It's not actually something that we measure at all today. Positive results on teacher efficacy, self-report, transfers of training effectively following professional development. 2.3, create a safe and productive learning / work environments in which every staff member can thrive. Physical and psychological safety survey positive results as an outcome, reduction in workers' compensation claims, and reduction in assault leave cases from the current baselines. And then finally, ensuring quality staff, reimagined effective selection and screening processes for new hires, targeted development and career pathing plans by position and differentiated level of experience, or differentiated to the level of experience, excuse me, fully trained administrators and supervisors and effective management practices, and competitive pay and benefits for all staff.
And then while you're processing, trustees, if I might, and Scott, if it's okay, I know like today when we talked to you yesterday, one of, I think like a real good, just on a Teams meeting, going over what the team that worked on this Monday did. And Scott, if I may, like you said, what's so good about this column that we're yet to work on is that we've been looking, some things are new, you just said that.
Yeah.
But then some of them are, and we've just been waiting. And you said, we have the data in the middle of the year to know what that's going to look like at the end of the year. We just don't have a system where we report out, right?
Yeah, the vast majority of these certainly don't require that you wait till the end of a 12-month or a school year measurement period. It can be looked at certainly monthly and maybe even more frequently than that if we chose, depending on what the individual measurement was. But yes, a lot of these already have measurement metrics that could align pretty easily.
You're not asking the team to create reports, you're just asking them to get print on a date instead of waiting, until the end of the year and then get an update. I just thought that was a really good, I just smiled when he said it. That's awesome. I mean, that's good. All right, trustees, is that enough of a, again, we're looking at the outside 2 columns. Again, you'll see, I think this is word for word from, I think this one, pulled over to 1-to-1, because trustees, you had already articulated something that all the information was saying that's the right And Jody, if you don't mind, the name of, does that not help me? Does that?
No, that's not, that was.
So that was us. Okay, that was us working. Okay, we're gonna move, remember, student, staff, stakeholder, stewardship, we're on staff. So we'll jump to likes and wonderings. Yes, ma'am.
Couple wondering, so we've been trying to make the shift from professional development to professional learning. And so my first wondering is, can we consider adopting that language, and if we're refraining from doing so, what's the reason? My second question was, if we're,
Can we consider professional learning instead of
Professional
professional
learning.
development and training? Yeah, we just want to be consistent with language.
Got it.
and I'm so sorry, I had another question, but I'll have to look at the.
You wanna flip back to the scorecard?
Okay.
Let's see if it- here.
Okay, all the way up to the top with like the overarching category. Okay, ensure a strong, motivated, and well-supported workforce. So with all of this, I see professional learning or professional development repeatedly. Is there space for this to add something about our curriculum? Because when we have a strong curriculum, a guaranteed and viable curriculum, that's helping our staff be engaged and
Yeah.
thrive.
So we,
Is that something we,
if I may address that, so a moment ago I was talking about isolating the objective. We had this good conversation on Monday. We're trying to get clarity between what, I'm just gonna say it real plainly, what lives in the yellow, what lives in the blue, what lives in the green. Does that make sense? And so, you were talking about.
staff uses the curriculum.
Right, but we're I'm assuming on priority one, guaranteed viable curriculum will be something that, like, we've got to make sure we have curriculum alignment, like, that's gonna be a strategy, right, that lives up in there.
Consider the curriculum audit, all of the findings and actions would live under the yellow section. But I think what you're saying is, a supported staff member has the right resources, including curriculum, to thrive in their job, right?
Yeah, and I mean, when we look at our employee engagement, that's something that is being voiced. And so we can support them with training and stuff like that, but
Okay, now
I
I'm
just
getting
didn't see
there.
it mentioned anywhere.
Jody's grabbing it, so
Yeah.
that's, I got that, now I'm getting that connection to that one. Okay, awesome, great. Other trustees?
I do. So I know that in all of them, we did talk about professional learning, training, all of those things. One of the things that we've heard in feedback with school visits that's repeatedly been talked about is training to admins, clerks, secretaries at the campus level, and they don't feel like they are adequately getting that. It's so much at once. It's a drinking from a fire hydrant. Is there any way to outline that we want to make sure that they are getting the training they feel they need?
Okay, so that, I think Jody, like the training for support staff, how can we ensure?
Yeah, and this is beyond teachers and TAs and that. This is truly
Like the secretaries
teams, clerks. They
on
do so much more now.
Yep.
handling the activity reports.
Yeah, and that's where we're hearing it so much more. And when we were talking to them, they were saying that when they were hired for this position or at the beginning of the year, they were given 5 minutes in a seminar, and they're like, I can't even remember.
Well, I mean, we learned something today in all the House Bill 2
Not paras,
stuff.
more admin, clerks, front office staff, maybe is the better way to say that.
So that, Brooklyn, they refer to those sometimes as paras too.
Oh, okay,
We know-
sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, we know what you mean.
Thank you.
You're probably around 55% teachers in Arlington ISD, 60% of the total workforce. That sounds about right. So what we're saying is, we have a tendency to equate training to that 60%.
Yes.
What about training for the other 40%? That's what we're saying, basically. I think it's a great wondering. Okay, great example. Others?
I'm gonna add a wondering, and it dawned on me today, but I think I need to add it from superintendent lens. Can you go back to the other document, please, Jody? it was down there on the safe and productive environment. Again, that word productive, and I think we gotta be clear about what that means for people, because it's the same language that we had before. But then the outcomes on the right are all like safety type things from an HR lens. And I just question, is there more that we need to look at for a safe, productive learning environment where every staff member can thrive than just some of the HR metrics on that? I think we need to examine those metrics.
So the wondering, that was 2.2, is that right?
Yep.
So
It's in our.
2.2, are there other metrics we're not currently using to help us find it? Trustees, just, I thank you for pointing out, so if the statement that came from here, this said students and staff, and then we split those apart between, so one of them says students up above and one of them says staff. Because again, we're trying to isolate the objectives so we can isolate the outcome.
And Jody, you can go back real quick to that same one in the document. It says earning, not learning.
Well,
It's cut.
Earning.
Yeah.
It's cut off.
The format has it cut.
Oh, okay.
One more.
Learning can be earned.
Yeah.
It can go together.
One more real quick. It's alike, and I'd like to just make one little suggestion. I like that teacher efficacy is in there. Can we consider naming it as collective teacher efficacy? Because we're working really hard to streamline the work teachers do in PLC and all that, and actually make them feel a sense of purpose on their team or their department, and that goes with culture. And collective teacher efficacy is the #1 driver of student performance. So I think if we said collective, that would help us sell out the expectation that we want them to do it in teams instead of silos.
Okay. Anything else, trustees, on priority 2? We're actually tracking on time, so it's time to roll 3. I'm gonna help the 3 team if everybody's moving, because we have an interim. You actually have made a really strong hire, so we did get to Zoom with her yesterday, which was kind of cool. And Erin and the team, we got to get her on. She's more than casually, would you say, she's pretty stoked about the scorecard. Yeah, a little bit excited about it. Loves, the concept of the lead measures, lag measures, really leaned into that. We were a little bit worried on Monday, like, man, we haven't really talked to her, but, we're putting some stuff in here. And did she feel like to you, she removed all that doubt?
Oh, yeah.
Because she's good with what's on this and more.
And ready to add,
And ready
yes.
to add.
Yes.
So it's a little light on details is all I'm saying, but that's fine. But I do know this, and Jody, if you don't mind, we'll talk. Yep.
Yeah, and that comes straight from the board's current priorities, right at the very top: marketing, engagement, and the definition.
Trustees, I'm going to ask a question. Do not laugh at me. I have a delicate disposition. Just kidding. So 3.1, that is marketing. 3.3 is communication. We are assuming that both of those should stay on here, and we are assuming they should stay in 2 objectives.
Yes, because they're different for us.
Anybody have? Okay, so that's what we thought, but we're going to ask that question. So we will isolate for straight up marketing in 3.1, and then we'll go to more general.
Because marketing is how we are advertising. What are we saying about as communication? How are we communicating to our parents that are currently here? What is it? And those are 2 different things under the same umbrella, though.
And I'll just, like I was in a suburb district last night nearby. It was different. Marketing and communication could have lived together. Does that make sense, right? Right.
That's cool.
No, I have to.
That's fine.
Yeah.
What did they say? What did they say, and what can we do better?
No. I'm just saying, see, for them, it was okay to have marketing and actually they had communication, and marketing was one of their actions. I don't think it.
There's a clear distinction. So marketing's the sales.
Yeah.
We're
That's
selling.
right.
We're selling a product. We're in a community we're required to sell ourselves because there's choice. In districts where there's not choice or as many choices,
That's correct.
that function is very small and it can live inside that
The
community.
district I just retired from like 4 years ago is now really, they're in San Antonio, which is kind of ground zero for charter schools. And then my 12 years there, we were a little bit exempt. It just got closed, and now it's there. right? So it's like, we can't just talk about the theory of charter schools anymore, you know, I think right now it's like Subway, pizza, Italian food, charter school, Subway, like that, literally, it's just that. Okay, thank you.
Veronica, are you okay sharing this, or is it Aaron, or is it Natalie? Who can share what we have here?
I can share it up.
Yeah, Aaron's prep.
So, yeah, the objective 3.1, execute an effective year-round marketing plan. And so I think previously it said develop and implement, and so we want to offer up execute an effective year-round marketing plan. And so it's constantly being reviewed. If you skip over to the end measures, we looked at EOY website analytic rate. And so Ryan Pierce offered that, and that we have the capabilities of taking constant look at those. And then we wanted to put in, consider adding student enrollment metric. That will put a lot of weight on all of this measure, but it's something that we believe is important, and we want to be able to take that on.
All right. 3.2.
Okay, 3.2, establish an inclusive culture of respect, support, and partnership with all families. We were offering possibly consider changing the word establish to nurture. And then that measure would be the parent engagement and satisfaction survey that's done.
Does that make sense, trustees, that we're gonna lean into it exists, and so we're gonna foster it or nurture it?
Well, you could even say cultivate and nurture, because there may be places that we have to grow it from the ground, and then there are other ones that are existing that you need to maintain.
Okay, I think on 3.2 I would put a wondering, could we say it again, please? Could we have cultivate?
Can we have cultivate and nurture, because some will need to be from the beginning, and others need to be nurtured and then grown.
Good. Still wondering? We'll jump back.
But I don't like the word established, because I think it sounds like we haven't cared, right?
That's kind of a thing, like, just confirm.
It's not lack of caring.
Right, thank you.
Right, and then that 3.3 is streamline and amplify communication. Natalie said that we could possibly put some questions in the parent survey that would be able to draw out that type of measure. Yeah.
Afterwards, that using one survey, you and I had a really good conversation today that you hear survey. It doesn't mean that there's a survey going out every single time we say survey. It may mean that we're extracting questions 1 through 3 for this, or 4 through 5 for this. We're splitting those survey results to get us a dipstick on how we're doing on different things on the plan. But you can oversaturate this with
100%.
Yeah.
Survey fatigue.
You can survey fatigue, 100%.
One of those things, can we go back to the form? Okay, consider adding items to the existing parent survey. One of the things we've heard about with our communication is parents feel like they are over-communicated with and in too many different avenues. Is there a way to measure or to show that we heard, especially this last 9 months, is there a way that we can measure and show that we've heard feedback and we have taken steps? So it isn't a brand new way, but what have we done since we got this feedback?
We had some conversations around focus groups, reviewing survey data earlier, to your point, but it's a great wondering and it's going on there.
Because to keep just having the same thing said over and over means obviously we are not giving them what they're asking for.
Can we go back, Jody, to the
Thank
document, to the first one? I think the measures on 3.1 need a lot of work. Because there's one thing about, you've got a marketing plan, but what you're going to measure is dependent on what's in that marketing plan. You say website analytics, which website analytics? Number of hits to the homepage. What about social media? Most people don't go to the website. So there's a lot of,
We should funnel our focus.
Veronica can help us with on, once we see the plan, what the measures should be.
Right.
So that's a work in progress right now in a big way.
You're just based on one 30-minute Zoom, you're gonna have no shortage of outcome measures, is my opinion. Like, we may have to be eliminating, but we're gonna capture your comment because you would want it that way.
That relates to my like, very quickly. I like that, can we see it again? Sorry, it's hard to not see it. I like that we have consider adding student enrollment metric. I like that we're rising to that challenge. I think it's important, and I like it a lot. I hope it doesn't go away.
So here's the only nervous piece that I have. Remember, you're developing my evaluation instrument in this too.
Yes.
And there's a whole lot that goes into that. So I hear you. I'm ready to rise to that challenge, but that makes me a little nervous too.
Can I double down on that but wonder?
It's a whole lot of wondering from my point of view.
Yeah, and make Matt more nervous because that's the marketing plan. Like, one of our core priorities should be to handle declining enrollment as a priority. And like, that should be at least a bullet by itself, not rolled into the marketing plan.
Yeah.
Why is it in the marketing plan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why don't we have a bullet for measuring
Jody, I think
increasing enrollment?
Put a wandering on 3.
One.
3.1, thank you.
I mean, that's a pretty important challenge for us right now, and from our SWOT analysis, and like.
Should student enrollment stand alone somewhere and not be a part of?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what he's. So should student enrollment stand alone somewhere?
Like it. No, the marketing plan is more than just enrollment.
Well, I think the entire point of marketing is to get more customers.
Well, yeah.
Those are your customers.
But no, there's
And then
more
those
to it.
customers give you money.
I know, but increasing enrollment is a priority outside of the marketing plan. And that gets back to why it's unusual that we have marketing as a priority when that's usually something that supports our priorities. So, but we need work on marketing, so that's why it's there. But I would say enrollment is at least a strategy that belongs in the left-hand column here under marketing.
So, Dr. Smith, I think that we capture enough feedback.
Yep, we can mess with that.
Yeah. All right, it's a good wondering. Okay, bringing us on the tailspin, and I think there's cookies left over. So yeah, you got a bonus cookie tonight. Counters don't count at board meetings is what I always heard. So we're moving to priority 4. This is something that we're in our company very, very proud of. And you've got some requirements with audits and first reports and all of that. Truthfully, in my opinion, in the green section of stewardship, there's not a lot of like real innovative necessarily, like maybe like innovative actions to think about or whatever. But yeah, you might see some in there. I think it's more about clarity and transparency. When we pull something over to the scorecard, it means we're going to talk about it on a regular basis, and not just once a year. And is that fair? Like that, you and I just over and over. That's what we kept. Okay, it just means we're going to talk about it more than at the once a year reports. Anyway, Laura, are you covering it?
Absolutely. We'll get started. 4.1, allocate district resources strategically to address student and staff needs. The first thing I'll say is we worked independently, Kelly, Norberto, Eric, and myself, after we met in the group meeting. I don't think we had verbs in the first section, so we worked to try to identify how we might word that, so that may be a little different than the senior staff saw it on Monday. So the outcomes that we associated with that was maintain X% in function 10 instruction. And so if the board remembers in the workshop we talked about in one of your little toolkits, that's how you actually adopt the budget at the functional level. And we thought that functions 11, 12, and 13, those top 3, we would go back maybe 5 years and look at what the trend was for the percentage of our instruction or those in function 10 and kind of determine where we want that to be. why is that important? When you actually adopt the budget, you can say, did instructional go down? Did the things in function 11, 12, and 13 go down? Did they go up? As in relationship to some of the other instructions, or some of the other functions. And then redirect X% of financial resources from zero-based budgeting to support campus needs index. So we talked about going zero-based next year for campuses and departments. And so when you do that, typically you see savings. And if we had those savings, our thoughts were, well, a certain percent of those savings would go to help with the budget gap. The other percent might be moved, focused on supporting campus needs and index. And we've got to just land on what percent we think that might be. And then percent of student campus program needs are met, and try to determine what percent that is and what we want our outcome to be as far as that.
Okay. 4.2.
And so we talked about this one a bit because, again, as Greg said, transparency for me, I think everybody knows that that's real big for me. So we landed with ensure solvency, sustainability, and transparency with district finances. And so several ways to measure that. I think we talked about, there are a lot of things in statute that are required of us, that are required of us to actually report out to the board. But we started with the top one, maintain required 90 days cash on hand, 90 days or greater cash on hand to sufficiently cover operating expenditures. And that is one of the indicators in our first rating. And so we wanted to go back and look at that and say, we need to make sure that we look at that outcome and we stay there. That way we know it kind of helps us with our solvency and sustainability of the district finances. The second one, maintain 75 to 85% utilization rate for all campuses. We've done some work, Kelly and his team, at looking at what the utilization are on our campuses. And again, that could be when we save on that, we actually can use those funds for student outcomes or to move them in other places. And then reduce general operating fund budget deficit by 33% per year and maintain general operating fund balance threshold at 25%. That's something that we have actually recommended to the board to change that policy, and I think you're in the process of looking at that. But when we talk about the 33%, we know we do have a budget gap right now. I think we got some more information on House Bill 2 so far. So we'll see how that lands, but regardless, we still have to address that. We still have to address that budget gap, and it should be done over a period of time. So if we say X% in year 1, X% year 2, X% year 3, until we can kind of get the general operating fund stabilized. Compliance with posted financial reports to district website. Most of you know we have a financial transparency page on the website, and there are required postings that we have to have on there as well. 100% of community advisory committee meetings occur with structured feedback. Greg, help me talk through that.
What does that look like?
Well, thank you. So there's solvency and sustainability, and there was a moment when none of this was here. Okay, so we had got to solvency and sustainability, but not to transparency. So like, how do you get to transparency? So we had talked about the community, and again, these are just notes, but that's one of the reasons I say just leave that in there. So we know an outcome measure initially is to say if we're going to incorporate financial transparency into community advisory, then an initial one is just to say we're going to have the meetings. This may go away, but we're trying to just make sure the board knows that we're trying to get at transparency. You have a web presence right now that we went ahead and left this so you could see the more user friendly. It's like the comptroller's kind of the way the comptroller wants it, and there's some efforts right now. This is where your priority, back to the earlier comment, your priority 3 team and your priority 4 team will be working together. How do we make that more user friendly? And where people can look at that and go, oh, are you kidding me? That's how the budget works? So anyway, so those are all transparency things. It's hard to measure transparency. It's kind of like Hugo Black, the Chief Justice. I can't define pornography, but I know it when I see it. it's kind of like transparency. Chief Justice said that.
In comparison.
That's my point. One of our Chief Justices said that.
A version of that might look like you can ask questions of a document with AI. So we're gonna have a chatbot loaded on those pages where you can just ask questions without having to read 30-page documents.
You're so smart. Look
Yeah,
at
That's what we're
you.
trying to do.
That's a good.
That's why we recruited you to the team.
Yeah.
We
Great
transform technology.
The last,
Look at that.
So, yeah, let's keep moving so we can get our thoughts or our likes and wonderings.
the final piece, Darlene?
Optimize operational efficiencies, and we try to think about different departments within the district. So safe, clean, and well-maintained learning environments, improve student and staff perception of facilities. Of course, that comes through surveys, again, that we're already having. Efficient use of school space, optimal school size. So once we determine what our school sizes need to be, we can measure that on a regular basis as well. Then an annual report of sustainable savings found in software application analysis. We kind of talked about that a little bit, and we moved one of those over as well. I think that was one of them, Greg, I'm not real sure, but.
Yes, but it might be up above.
Yeah. I think
Well,
we
there's
moved
so
it
many
in the
things I
middle.
love.
We moved it in the middle.
There's a lot of really good potential stuff in this.
Yeah, and then, yes, that one. And then the annual report of sustainable savings found in, well, that's the one I just said, sorry. Full compliance with district life cycle management plan, higher student meal participation rates, we measure that already. David Lewis does in his department. And then annual energy management report, we talked about that a little bit, or that's one maybe that we added once we talked about energy and what we could do.
That's a good example of one you're doing, but by living on here, we're ensuring that it's getting talked about on a regular basis in a very public forum. That just needs to be shared. I mean, we have 100 ways we're trying to save energy. I can't even imagine what your electric bills are. I don't want to know. I have no FOMO on electric bills. Okay,
This
thank you.
information comes from their priorities at the very top. The priority for resources and that language definition.
Okay, so likes and wonderings on priority 4. Transparency, solvency issue.
Yeah, I have some wonderings. Boundary lines, school boundary lines.
Attendance zones.
What's that?
Attendance boundaries.
Attendance boundaries.
Yeah. And 6th grade, and
Going to junior high, is that what you're saying?
and consolidation.
And if we're gonna do that, can we add transfer process in the mix? Because before we look at boundary lines, we need to look at transfer process.
Talk to me about what you mean by that, though.
So we know that there are some schools that are well under capacity, and we also know that there are some schools that are crowded. Before we looked at even consider changing boundaries, I would want to consider looking at how many transfers we approve for those crowded campuses. That's why I think if we're going to wonder about boundaries, we also need to wonder about transfers.
So I'm trying to figure out how that's an outcome, though. Because if you go back to what they were talking about in the outcomes, like one of the measures that they talked about was the what is it right there? Hold on. Keep going down. 75 to 85% utilization rate for all campuses. That's the outcome that they listed there, right?
Yeah.
So you're saying, Sarah, on that we want to take a look at it. You're talking about a strategy for us to take a look at that utilization rate.
See, we're talking about our strategies, not, he's more talking the strategies, not the outcomes.
Right.
I'm sorry, I was tagging on to what Larry said. I don't think we should look at boundaries as anything unless we look at.
The boundaries is in there as a strategy.
So we'll look at boundaries, but not our transfer process.
No, we agree with you too. We're just
Okay.
saying, those things are already captured in there, right, Darla?
Well, it will be part of, like column 2, what are the actions that
Yeah,
we're
it's-
gonna
it's-
take to
it's
get
already
to the
in
75
transfer.
Well, and frankly, I haven't even seen column 2 and 3. They just did this afternoon, I think. So I'm gonna weigh in on some of those strategies before we get to.
Oh, annual boundary
We
analysis.
were just
column
doing
three.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Again, Warren's looking at left-hand column and right-hand column.
Okay.
yeah.
Any other lights or wonderings?
One of the questions I have, board, goes to, you just articulated a marketing concern, and then you articulated also a budget concern and reduction. But I can tell you right now, if you want me to improve marketing in our system, I'm gonna have a marketing department. Just saying, it's like, there's some friction on some of the things that you're saying here, and I think we're gonna have to, when we get to the final product in this, we're actually gonna have to be able to realize that some of these things are gonna come into conflict with each other if we're not careful.
That's how it's always goes.
Yeah, one of the benefits to this is just the clarity about the objectives, so we're not using nebulous language when we're talking about those versions, like.
Yep.
4.1 is in conflict with 2.2.
That's right.
Making stuff up, so we solved for that conflict. Okay, trustees, that's what we needed tonight from the scorecard. We needed to do a pass and a run through, we got some really good feedback. Appreciate you sticking to the format. I know that y'all had a few closeout comments, so I'm just gonna say thank you for letting me do my part. I don't really have a closing story, so podcast you don't have. So I'm just, thank y'all for letting me be part of this, and I'll let Matt and Debbie close it out. Okay, we'll call it.
Go ahead, Jody.
You're on the working agenda now too.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm up here. So, and Dr. Smith, you feel free. So we're just listed out a few next steps. So now you just informed two things. Any consideration, Jody, if you'll put the scorecard back up, any considerations on tweaks to the objectives? I'll give us some feedback on some very critical points. I mean, you actually informed some of the stuff in the middle too. Like there's some things we pull out that will help us in the middle. SLT, I know you'll be school out this week.
And it's Friday.
Okay, so I think that may let school get out before we have another cabinet meeting to work on the scorecard. Might be a good idea. So then the senior leader team will start working on those middle columns, even though you've seen some notes in there. I'm going to double down what Dr. Smith said. Those are notes. We're just trying to hold things in there, so we'll work on those. Dr. Smith, where do you, the other thing we had on here, where do you see, summarize what we decided earlier on values and mission and vision? Maybe say that right now.
Yeah, so our senior staff, we're not gonna have a mission statement. We're gonna have a vision statement and values and beliefs. Our senior staff is gonna take your feedback. We're gonna develop a draft of the values and belief statements, and we're gonna make sure you get that on June 5th in the workshop when we come up to get an additional round of feedback before we land the final product. So that's what's coming next on that. Same with vision statement, the vision statements that we voted on up there. Our job is to now take those, see what we might need to tweak and bring them back to you for final approval at the end. See if you all are good for both of those, and that'll come June 5th. We may ask you for some additional feedback before, but I'm also trying to be realistic. That's 2 weeks from now, pretty much, so we got a lot of work to do in 2 weeks.
So it's board, early work, senior leader works on draft, board gives feedback, senior leader works on draft, board provides feedback, senior leader works, board lands, report adoption. It's 8 p.m. I said we would stop there. So we are done.
Greg, do you want to say anything
No.
about
Oh, yeah. So then, thank you, because I said, be sure to put that up right there. I have 1 minute. These are not the things that you necessarily need to do, but sometimes the boards will say, what does a performance management calendar look like? So if you're going, like we always recommend, I think y'all took team trust and good governance. So the question is not, did you do it once, it's how do you sustain the effort? So does this need to happen, see those are the months of the year, does this need to happen 2 times in a year, one time in a year? Board walks and board rounding, these are just strategies that some districts are using to get the strategic team, the board, to work with the tactical team on doing checks, especially with a district this size. So again, strategic roundtables, which you all call workshops, Dr. Smith already mentioned that. So again, I'm not saying those are the things that you need to do up there. This is just showing that we're being intentional by saying this is when these things occur so that the board can back up and see this is what we do at every month with performance management. And we'll be working on that after scorecard adoption. We just wanted to show that to you. I see some trustees fair to say y'all kind of nodding your head like, yeah, performance management. Okay, Jordan made me 1 minute late, sorry.
Justin, we're all good.
I think we're good.
Justin, just gotta close the board meeting and I think we're all done.
If there aren't any other comments or questions, we have no other business. Meeting at 8:02. All right.
Thanks, everybody. Good work.
Hey, Justin, you know,